In the beginning, before the first star burned its light into the darkness, before the earth was formed and the oceans were poured into their basins, before man's first breath echoed in the garden, there was war in heaven. But it was not yet the final war. It was the first fracture in the perfect kingdom of God, a fracture caused by pride, by rebellion, and by one angel who believed he could ascend above the Most High, Lucifer, the anointed cherub. Brilliant beyond comprehension, adorned with jewels of unimaginable beauty, his voice like the sound of harps and rushing waters. The scriptures tell us in Ezekiel 28 that he was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Yet in that perfection, a seed of corruption was found. He looked upon his own glory, and it became his downfall.
I will ascend into heavens,
He said.
I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be the Most High.
And it was in this moment that Michael the archangel, the prince of heaven's armies, took his place in the story of eternity. Michael is not like the angels we imagine in delicate paintings. He is not a quiet, harp-playing figure lost in clouds of gold. He is a warrior. The book of Daniel calls him the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people. In the heavenly hierarchy, he is a commander, a protector, a leader in the war against the forces of darkness. If Gabriel is the messenger, Michael is the sword. When the rebellion erupted, Scripture hints at a conflict of cosmic magnitude. Revelation 12 paints the scene in stark detail. When war broke out in heaven, Michael and his angels fought with the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail. Nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. This was not a battle of flesh and blood. It was a collision of eternal wills. The first war in heaven. Imagine it, the expanse of eternity trembling with the roar of millions of angelic warriors. Light clashing against darkness. The brilliance of God's loyal host surging against the black flame of rebellion. Michael at the front, his sword blazing like a living star, his voice calling commands in a language older than time itself. And against him Lucifer, now the dragon, his beauty twisted into horror, his eyes burning with hatred for the throne he could not claim. The scriptures are concise in their telling, but the reality? It must have been a storm unlike anything the created order had ever seen. Angels of immeasurable power locked in combat. The thunder of divine energy tearing through the heavens. And when it was over, the outcome was decisive. Lucifer fell. His angels fell with him, cast out from heaven, hurled into the realm below. Isaiah 14 captures the mockery of the fallen one. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. But even in his fall, the war was not finished. Michael had won the battle, but the war for creation had only just begun. For centuries upon centuries, Michael would remain in the shadows of human history, stepping into the mortal realm, only when the command came from the throne. We see him in the book of Daniel, standing against the demonic princes of Persia and Greece's spiritual powers ruling over empires. We see him again in the New Testament, contending with Satan himself over the body of Moses, a mystery only briefly mentioned in the book of Jude. Always Michael's presence is tied to conflict, to defense, to the protection of God's people. But Satan, once Lucifer, did not fade into silence. Cast to the earth, he became the adversary, the accuser, the tempter. And though he could no longer touch the throne of God, he set his eyes on the next best thing. God's image bearers, humanity. This is the battlefield of the ages, not the heavens, but the hearts of men. The coming final battle between Michael and Satan is not just a rematch of ancient rivals. It is the climax of a war that has raged for millennia. Every spiritual skirmish, every prophetic vision, every unseen clash between angels and demons is building toward a single moment described in Revelation 12, the last war in heaven. But this time, it will not just shake the heavens, it will shake the earth. And so, the stage is set. From the moment sin entered the garden, the two forces moved in parallel lines toward an inevitable collision. Michael, the guardian of God's people, standing against Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. Across the ages, their paths cross in shadows, sometimes in visions given to prophets, sometimes in battles beyond the veil of human perception. And though mankind rarely sees it, every empire that rises, every kingdom that falls, every tyrant, every revival, these are but ripples from the deeper war raging in the spirit realm. In the days of Daniel, Michael was called to stand against powers that sought to crush God's people in exile. In those days, nations were more than nations. They were under the dominion of spiritual rulers, principalities, and powers. The archangel's resistance ensured the survival of a people who would carry the promise of the Messiah. Without Michael's intervention, history as we know it might have shifted into darkness far sooner. Centuries later, after Christ's resurrection, the spiritual war intensified. Satan, defeated at the cross, yet still prowling like a roaring lion, sought to destroy the early church. And again, though unseen, Michael's armies guarded the mission. How many times did invisible hands shield believers from destruction? How many times did the hosts of heaven push back the tide of darkness, just long enough for the gospel to advance another step? These are the untold stories of an eternal war. But make no mistake, the Bible is clear that the conflict will end in one last cataclysmic battle. In Revelation, John sees the vision. The dragon, knowing his time is short, unleashes his fury on the earth. The nations rage. The earth convulses. The heavens prepare for war once more. And Michael, silent for ages, once again steps forward, not as a messenger, not as a negotiator, but as a warrior with one mission: to end the rebellion forever. This final heavenly battle will not be like the first. The first was a war of expulsion. The last will be a war of annihilation. In that day, the dragon will not be cast from heaven alone. He will be bound, chained, and cast into the abyss. And those who followed him will face their final judgment. Even now, there are hints of this coming moment in the world around us. The wars of nations, the rise of lawlessness, the spread of deception. These are not random events. They are the tremors of the coming storm. The Apostle Paul warns in Ephesians 6, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." And Michael? He is the commander in that very war. So who is Michael? He is the sword in God's hand, the defender of Israel, the leader of heaven's armies. And when the heavens shake for the final time, his name will once again be spoken in awe and in terror, depending on which side you stand. As we close this first part of our journey into the story of Michael and Satan, remember this: every earthly battle is just the surface of something far greater. The forces of light and darkness are locked in a war that began before time, and it will end in a moment when the heavens split open, the armies of God ride forth, and Michael, clothed in the authority of the Most High, meets the dragon in the final clash. But that, my friends, is only the beginning. The war in heaven was no ordinary conflict. It was the eternal clash of good and evil, light and darkness, truth and deception. Michael, the archangel, stood as the leader of the heavenly armies, carrying the authority given directly by God. Satan, once known as Lucifer, had been cast out of heaven for his pride and rebellion, but his hatred never faded. Now, as the final battle approached, the stakes were not just the fate of heaven, but the destiny of the entire creation. The angels gathered, forming ranks of blazing light, their armor shining like molten gold, their wings spreading wide across the expanse. Michael's voice rang out, deep and commanding, echoing like thunder across the heavens. This is the hour. We fight for the glory of the Most High. We fight for truth. The angels responded with a roar that shook the firmament. Satan's forces emerged from the abyss, shadows twisting into monstrous forms, eyes burning with unholy fire. Demonic legions filled the battlefield like a storm cloud, their laughter a chilling mockery of all that was pure. At the front stood Satan, his appearance both beautiful and terrifying, a corrupted reflection of the glory he once held. His voice was venomous as he shouted across the void.
I will win this battle. No one can defeat me.
The battlefield was unlike anything ever seen, a place where the spiritual realm collided with unimaginable power. Each clash of swords was more than metal against metal. It was the collision of righteousness and rebellion. Michael met Satan head-on, their blades igniting sparks of divine energy that lit the darkness like miniature suns. Every strike carried the weight of millennia of enmity. Satan's strikes were fast, driven by pure rage, but Michael's every movement was deliberate, guided by the will of God. The armies around them clashed with an intensity beyond human comprehension. Angels wielded weapons of light, cutting through demonic forms that reformed, only to be struck down again. Demons fought with claws, dark magic, and hatred, their shrieks piercing the heavens. The ground itself seemed to tremble under the sheer power of the battle. As the fight raged, Michael recalled the moment Lucifer first rebelled. He remembered the sorrow in God's voice when the once brilliant angel chose pride over obedience. It fueled Michael's resolve. This battle was not about personal glory, but about restoring the order that Satan had shattered. The tide of battle swayed back and forth. At times, the demonic forces seemed to gain ground, their overwhelming numbers threatening to engulf the heavenly host. But then Michael's command would ring out, rallying his warriors, and the light would push the darkness back. Satan, seeing his forces falter, unleashed his most devastating power, a surge of darkness that blotted out the light around them, consuming everything in a suffocating black void. In that darkness, whispers of despair filled the minds of the angels, tempting them to give up, to believe that the battle was lost. Michael stood firm, raising his sword high, and from it erupted a brilliant light that pierced through the darkness like a spear through the heart of the night. The void shattered, and hope returned to the angelic ranks. The final duel between Michael and Satan grew more intense. Every blow they exchanged was a battle in itself, shaking the very foundations of the spiritual realm. Satan fought with desperation now, realizing that his rebellion was crumbling. He sought to strike at Michael's heart, to make him doubt, to lure him into anger and pride. But Michael's strength came not from himself, but from his obedience to God.
The victory isn't mine, Satan.
His voice calm even in the chaos.
Lord is the victor.
With a final surge of divine power, Michael's sword cleaved through the darkness surrounding Satan, striking him with a force that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. Satan's scream echoed through all realms, a cry of defeat and rage. The demons scattered, their forms dissolving into nothingness as the light of God's presence filled the space. Satan was bound, cast down once more, his power broken. The war was over. The heavenly host stood victorious, not because of their might, but because of their unwavering faith in the one they served. As silence fell over the battlefield, the light of heaven grew brighter, washing away every shadow. Michael sheathed his sword and knelt before the throne of God, offering the victory to him alone. The angels sang in unison, their voices a chorus of praise that filled the cosmos. The message of the battle would echo for eternity. Evil may rise, but it will never prevail against the light of God. The final heavenly battle had been fought, and the glory belonged to the Lord forever. Yet, even as peace returned to heaven, Michael knew that vigilance must remain. Satan, though defeated, would continue to roam the earth, seeking to deceive and destroy until the appointed time of final judgment. This victory was a reminder to all creation. The war between light and darkness is real, and each soul has a part to play in choosing whom they will serve. Michael's gaze turned toward the world below, his heart steady and his resolve unshaken. For as long as God willed it, he would stand guard over creation, defending it from the schemes of the enemy. And when the final day came, when heaven and earth would be renewed, he would once again lead the charge, not in war, but in the eternal peace of God's kingdom. The memory of the battle would remain forever etched in the hearts of the angels. They had witnessed the power of faith, the strength of obedience, and the ultimate futility of pride and rebellion. Michael's leadership was not marked by dominance, but by service, a reflection of the very nature of the God he served. Satan's downfall was a warning to all who would seek their own glory above the will of the Creator. In the quiet after the storm, the golden light of heaven touched every corner of the realm. The gates stood open, welcoming all who had remained faithful, their rewards not in crowns or thrones, but in the joy of being forever in God's presence. Michael walked among his warriors, offering words of encouragement and gratitude. They had fought with courage, endured with hope, and stood firm when darkness threatened to overwhelm them. In their unity, they had mirrored the divine harmony of heaven itself. Though the war had ended, the lessons of the battle would guide them for all eternity. Faith is the greatest weapon against the enemy. Obedience is the shield that no darkness can penetrate. And the glory of God is the light that will never fade. Michael returned to his post at the gates of heaven, watchful and ready. His eyes, clear and unyielding, looked toward the horizon where heaven touched the realms beyond. The enemy was gone for now, but the story of the final heavenly battle would be told and retold, a testament to the truth that light will always overcome darkness. The heavenly armies rested, knowing that their leader stood vigilant, and that their victory had been sealed not by their hands, but by the power and will of the Almighty. And so, in the eternal kingdom of light, peace reigned once more, until the day when the King himself would return to make all things new.